must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
It is ridiculous and it is against the laws of nature that we can have somebody sitting pretty who takes home more money than the credible entrepreneur who is doing actual production of goods and services.
We always say it as it is. It is only in this country that when a thief is arrested, you hear elders from their tribe saying, he is our son and he is our thief.
If you are deviant and I call you leader,
Yes.
probably you are already a leader, but you are leading in the wrong direction.
We want to see the role of the youth in the security, governance, and development.
The youth that I meet and work with here, you know, we call them the millennials and X's and Y's, this and that. They don't necessarily want to live like their fathers and grandfathers, do business like their fathers and grandfathers. They're more independent, they're better educated, and they're the ones that are making everything move in this region.
We look at the issues, we talk about issues that impact people's lives in Africa. The African peoples themselves continue to cheer bad leaders, and because they cheer them on, they continue to be misled.
Let me ask you, doctor, would you rather be somebody who does not enjoy so much freedom but you are rich?
Yes.
Or you'd rather be poor who you are actually imprisoned by the poverty itself?
My goal is not to come here and say, I want the majority ownership, I want to own this, I want to own that, I want to do this. My goal is we all make money and we're all happy, and I help build a big business here.
Punchline is for Africa, with Africa, from Africa.
The legal system in Kenya has seen what we call cheap activism. The judiciary is supposed to be the last temple of justice. The judges are supposed to be the last people who safeguard us from any form of ill treatment. The judiciary is supposed to help, but slowly by slowly and painfully, something is emerging in Kenya as far as the war of corruption is concerned. The judiciary seems to be playing a role of stagnating and even frustrating the international approaches of fighting corruption. The judiciary in Kenya has sunk so low to the point that judges no longer speak with one voice. If you look at the rulings that have taken place in the last 6 to 7 months, you will wonder whether this court is under the guidance of the Chief Justice, or there is what we could call uncoordinated troop movement of anybody making decisions, whatever decisions, whether they hurt the country, the security of the country, the security of the people of Kenya, whether they hurt the economy of this country. These judges have done it, and they have done it without looking back. Political activism has taken over the legal minds that we used to have in these courts. There is a need, therefore, for overhauling the entire system that can bring about good system that can help the government in the fight against corruption. President Uhuru Kenyatta has a desired legacy. A desired legacy cannot be reached when you have a corrupt, incompetent, inept judiciary. Several cases slip away. Take the cases of NYS 1, NYS 2, people who have been given bail, high-profile cases. These cases seem to have oozed away. It is very sad, therefore, for the people of Africa to sit, watch a judiciary dismantle itself and dismantle other institutions.
You know, when one is asked to talk about leadership in Africa, one's mind wanders in many directions, because in the recent past, the continent of Africa has been the subject of scrutiny from many quarters. There are those who are Afro-pessimists and take the view that Africa will never realize our potential. There are those Afro-optimists who take the view that the jury is still out on the success or otherwise of the continent of Africa. I am an Afro-optimist. I take the view that this continent has had a glorious past, and that this continent has had her trials and tribulations, but her better days are in the future. There are those who, when talking about Africa, are in the habit of dealing with Africa as if it were one monolithic block. They do not recognize that the beauty of Africa is in her diversity. And indeed, when you care to undertake a geographical survey of Africa, you will be amazed at what the west of Africa offers, what the center of Africa offers, what the south of Africa offers, what the Horn of Africa offers, and what the north of Africa offers. That is the continent that we are talking about today. And we are talking about her because she continues in many ways to punch below her weight. And many are the commentators who take the view that the reason why she continues to punch below her weight is because the men and women who have had the privilege and honor to serve her in different political capacities or leadership capacities have not served her well. There may be merit in that assessment, but those who are quick to judge, those whose only claim to fame is that they are professional fault finders, must ask many questions before they judge and condemn Africa unfairly. This continent, and I remember, and if we are to judge this continent fairly, we must go back to the past and look to the past and ask about this continent. And there are many who have written about this continent. How many of you here will forget the great writings of Senegal's Anta Diop, who has documented in many ways the glorious past of the continent of Africa, the great kingdoms in Africa. When Europe was still in the caves, Africans were building monuments. If they were not building them in the Ashanti Empire, they were building them in Monomotapa here in Zimbabwe. And there is a sense in which all those have been consigned to the Museum of History. And those who look at Africa see Africa as a scar on the conscience of humanity, not remembering that they were themselves co-authors of Africa's misfortunes. We are the only continent and the only people in the world who have been commodified. How many of you will remember that agrarian Europe had to commodify Africa in order to realize our level of development? At one time in those early days, we will remember, even as we talk about leadership, that half of the population of this continent was taken away. If they were not taken away from Ghana, which they then christened Gold Coast, they were taken away from Angola. If they were not taken away from Angola, they were taken away from Mozambique. If they were not taken from Mozambique, they were taken from Senegal. If the Arabs were not taking us, the Europeans were taking us. If the Europeans in their different tribes were not conquering us, they were stealing from us. Those are the realities that we don't talk about when we talk about this continent. And you know, if one cares to judge the African continent, one must be historically conscious. The oldest African country after we regained our independence from greater chief. And the question that we must ask ourselves, why is it that this continent finds ourselves in that space? If it is not Europe summoning us, it is the United States of America summoning us. Everybody is in the business of summoning us.
A very good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're coming to you right from Nairobi, and that is the Kenya's capital, and indeed in East Africa. Good afternoon, good evening, depending from which part of the world you're watching us from this morning. Just a few minutes past 11 a.m. East African time, and a lot of things are happening this morning in the continent. Of course, making headlines even in the local dailies here in Kenya. The trip that the president has made together with the opposition leader and the AU special envoy for infrastructure in China is really causing a lot of criticism and mixed reactions among Kenyans, and what that will mean when it comes to the debt that the country is owing outside lenders and other things that are really, worrying Kenyans this morning. And so we'll look at that later on, the news making headlines across Kenya. But right now, of course, before we get into the African news, of course, the death toll from the Sri Lanka Easter Sunday bombings that happened, about 4 bombings happened in 3 churches and 4 hotels, and now the death toll has really risen for nearly 400 people have died, and over 500 people critically, nursing very serious injuries in various hospitals in the capital, Colombo, in Sri Lanka. So we'll keep you up to date with what is happening from that part part of the world. But right now, I am Miriam Ogutu, and let's just get to the news making headlines from Africa this morning. And before that, of course, we'll have other news that Dr. David Matanga will join me later, and we'll look at has the Kenyan handshake shaken impunity, and also focus on corruption in the judiciary. And in the African dispatches, we look at, does Africa have a social contract to sustain the borrowing for infrastructure development? We know we see a lot of African countries going out there and approaching different countries. Right now, it's like the whole of Africa is facing east, and by east, I mean China. And we see everybody's going there, and they're coming back with a bag of goodies in terms of money for infrastructural development. And has it worked? Has the money that is being borrowed by different African governments really doing what it's supposed to be doing? And do we have a social contract to sustain even the borrowing? And we'll look at just a few cases. And of course, right now, the Kenyan president, together with Raila Odinga, they are in China. Of course, they are in another summit. But of course, the president of Kenya is there to borrow some money to finish the second leg of the SGR project that will cost this country around 845 billion Kenya shillings, a debt that Kenya will have to pay over time. So that is something that we will look at. But right now, let's just delve into the African news, and we start with Sudan. And the head of Sudan's Military Transitional Council has told the BBC that the army will not use force against protesters who want to leave power. Lieutenant General Abdel Fattah Abdulrahman Burman said as African leaders extended their ultimatum for the military to organize a return to civilian rule, the army had warned it would remove protesters camped outside its headquarters in the capital, Khartoum. Still in Sudan, and hundreds of protesters arrived on a packed train in Khartoum on Tuesday to join a weeks-long sit-in outside the army headquarters. Sudanese protesters vowed to continue their struggle for civilian government to take over from the military council set up from after the army ousted longtime President Omar al-Bashir on April 11th, following months of mass protests. We go to Uganda, where Ugandan lawmaker and Afro-pop artist Robert Kyagulanyi, popularly referred to as Bobi Wine, is currently under house arrest barely 24 hours after he was detained by police. Bobi Wine disclosed on social media that his house had been surrounded by police and the military, who have barred him from leaving the residence. Local media confirmed from police, who said the measure was part of a preventative arrest. A police spokesperson said the MP was planned to disrupt public order, hence his movement will be restricted until further notice. And in Malawi, Malawi has become the first nation to immunize children against malaria. Launched on Tuesday, the malaria vaccine pilot program will see at least 120,000 children in Malawi under the age of 2 injected with the RTS vaccine for partial protection to malaria parasite. We go to Madagascar, where voters in Madagascar will head to the polls on May 27th to elect lawmakers. On this very day, they will also vote on a bill to amend certain provisions of the country's constitution, which was adopted in 2010. The text provides for the abolition of the Senate and the granting of more powers to local authorities. The opposition leader, Mark Ravalomanana, has accused President Andry Rajoelina of wanting to change the country's supreme law against the will of the people. And we move to Eritrea, where now, in less than a year since the two countries made peace, Eritrea has shut all border crossings with neighboring Ethiopia. This is according to reports. The final route to the blocked, according to the Deutsche Welle Amharic service, was the Bure Asab crossing, which was opened only last December. The Afar Region Communication Bureau confirmed the report, adding that the closure was only on the Eritrean side. And in Algeria, Algeria's interim president Abdelkader Ben Salah has sacked the head of country's biggest oil company, Sonatrach, state media has announced. Abdelmourmen Oud Kadour is the latest high-profile businessman to be caught up in the investigations that have followed the resignation of former President Abdelaziz Bouteflika. And in Somaliland, 2 Canadian women sentenced to 40 lashes each day in the breakaway Republic of Somaliland after being convicted of consuming alcohol have been released from prison, Canadian media has reported. The government's Global Affairs Canada Department is quoted as saying that it is aware of their release and is providing them with consular services. And in South Africa, mudslides and flooding caused by torrential rain have killed 32 people in Durban and the wider KwaZulu-Natal province, officials have said, with the death toll expected to rise. Among those killed was a 6-month-old baby. Dozens of people have also been taken to hospital, and search and rescue teams are looking for more survivors under the rubble of collapsed buildings. And in Mozambique, authorities are now warning that a tropical storm could hit the country later this week, just 1 month after Cyclone Idai struck. Acumen Weather says the storm, which will be named Kenneth if it becomes the next organized tropical cyclone in the region, could also hit Tanzania. People in parts of Mozambique, Malawi and Zimbabwe are still reeling from the after effects of Cyclone Idai, which, according to the Disasters Emergency Committee, killed at least 960 people and left more than 3 million in need of humanitarian assistance. And in Egypt, African presidents meeting in Egypt yesterday agreed to give Sudan's ruling military council more time to introduce democratic reforms. Reuters news agency quotes the Egyptian leader Abdul Fattah al-Sisi as saying President Sisi was speaking in his role as the current chair of the African Union. Tensions have been growing between Sudan's new military rulers and demonstrators who have already forced Omar al-Bashir from his presidency. And in Tanzania, a landslide triggered by rains killed at least 3 people at a mine in northern Tanzania, a town of Arusha, on Tuesday, and left several people injured, a senior police official has confirmed. 2 people were pulled out alive after boulders and earth loosened by rain-trapped workers at a quarry for construction material on the outskirts of the tourist town. And in the DRC Congo, 37 bodies have been recovered after another boat sinking in the Democratic Republic of Congo, officials said yesterday, a week after a vessel capsized with nearly 130 people on board. 16 survivors were found near the spot where the boat sank on a river in the country's east on April 9th. Acting Governor Papi Omoga Chopa of Maniema province confirmed to the media. And in Uganda, at least 17 people have been killed following very heavy rains in Buyende district, eastern Uganda. The downpour on Tuesday morning ravaged villages in Kidera sub-county. Kidera chairman William Kiza said he had counted the bodies, and residents called for assistance amid fears of starvation and cholera outbreak. And we end with Cameroon, where the international community has been urged to take action to restore democracy and human rights under the rule of law in Cameroon. The call was made by parliamentarians of Global Action, PGA, as they welcomed the adoption of European Parliament resolutions on Cameroon and called for the immediate release of the leader of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, Maurice Kamto. And that is the latest this morning from Africa. Indeed, a lot of very sad news coming. Seems like very heavy rains. Even in Kenya right now, we have started experiencing very heavy downpours from 2 days ago. And we see that is the same with parts of Tanzania, where now a landslide has been triggered by heavy rains, has seen a mine collapse in the northern part of Tanzania, killing several people. And also we see in Uganda, at least 17 people have died in Buyende district, that is the eastern part of Uganda. So very sad news. And of course, the DRC, a boat has capsized again, and another one capsized, I think, a week ago. And earlier on, I think a month or so ago, another one also capsized with a number of enough people aboard. And very sad news. I think the torrential rains are really hitting Africa hard this time. Brian, good morning. This is Good Morning Africa coming to you from Nairobi. I am Miriam Gutu, and I was just going through the news-making headlines in Africa this morning. And of course, Sudan is still on the headlines. And the head of Sudan's Military Transition Council has now come out, and I was watching an interview. I was not able to watch the complete of it. I think he was having an interview with CNN yesterday. I watched it in passing, so I really don't know the content. I'll probably go and look for it. I did not have time to really get into what he was saying. But before that, he had an interview with the BBC, and he said, the military is not going to use force to get the protesters to leave the streets. Remember, last week, end of last week, the military came out and warned the protesters that it is time for them to leave the streets. And so the protesters, instead, hundreds of people came packed in trains into Khartoum yesterday, and now they are still outside the army headquarters, and they've increased in number, and they're coming from all over Sudan, especially where the protest started. I can't remember the name of the town, but a lot of Sudanese from there packed in trains yesterday and reached Khartoum yesterday. And so they increased in number. And so the army yesterday, our leader yesterday came and said, we are not going to forcefully get the protesters out of the streets. But of course, they had asked the protesters to remove the barricades. As it is right now, you cannot access the army barracks because the protesters had barricaded the area. And so the army was pleading with them to get the barricades out and for them to go back to their homes because they seem to have achieved whatever it is that they wanted, but the protesters have stayed put in the streets of Khartoum, and they're saying no, until we see a civilian transition, we really are not going to leave this place. So that is what they're demanding. And I remember, just as I had read here, there was a meeting yesterday that was chaired by Egyptian President Fattah al-Sisi yesterday, and it had a couple of African presidents, and they were looking at the situation right now in Sudan and also in Libya. And in Sudan, they said they're allowing because they had been given a 15-day ultimatum. I think it's almost over, come early next week, I believe. And I think in their wisdom, they think it might not be enough time for the Sudanese transition, government as it is right now, the army, it might not have enough time for the Sudanese to get a leader and to have a civilian leader or prime minister, or what it is they want right now. So they've been allowed more time. I don't know how much time this is, but they're saying they've allowed Sudan ruling military council more time to introduce democratic reform. And of course, this has will allow them more time for transition. So I will confirm how much time the African Union have added to Sudan, because they had given them a 15-day ultimatum to set up, a transition led by a civilian. And that is what actually the protesters are demanding. They're saying they don't want to be under the rulership of military. And so they want a civilian ruler. So that is what they're still demanding. And so the army, of course, has said they will not forcefully get the people out of the streets. So I guess that is a good news for the protesters. But also I was just thinking maybe it's about time. Perhaps they give the army and the other stakeholders in this transition to just allow them time to really put up structures and do what they're supposed to do with them out there in the streets and the pressure. I don't know how that is working for these people, but you know what? They're still staying put in the streets of Khartoum and across Sudan, and more people are coming from other parts of Sudan to join the protesters in Khartoum. So it doesn't seem like the protest will be ending anytime soon. So that is a story that we're very keen on looking at, and we're keeping you up to date in whatever news we keep receiving out of this developing story. But the news as it is right now, Sudan has been allowed more time by the African Union, to put up the structures for a transitional government that finally will allow for a civilian leadership. And now also in Uganda, trouble will continue brewing for the Afro-pop music Robert Changulani, a.k.a. Bobby Wine. These are just... Okay, this is a remnants of what was happening to, what is his name? The opposition leader, right? So currently, as it is right now, Bobi Wine is under house arrest, barely 24 hours after he was detained by police, right? So now, Bobi Wine, of course, on social media disclosed that his house had been surrounded by police and the military had barred him from leaving his residence. Yeah. Anyway, so the local media confirmed from police who said that the measure was a part of a preventative arrest, and police spokesperson said that the MP planned to disrupt public order, hence his movement will be restricted until further notice. Remember, Bobi Wine was supposed to be having an Easter concert somewhere in Kampala, and so while he was making his way together with his entourage and his fans to the venue, he was stopped by the police. Initially, he had been told to call off the concert, but he decided, you know what, he will have the concert anyway. So the police waited for him while he was trying to access the venue, and I don't think he was able to perform in that concert that day. So since then, he was taken to police custody, but was released shortly after. And now, 24 hours after he was released, he's been put under house arrest, and Bobi Wine is not allowed to leave his house. We don't know until when, and the police are saying it's because he had planned to disrupt public order or public peace, and so his movement is being restricted. Democracy in Africa is very interesting, especially in Uganda. So that is what is happening in Uganda this morning. Thank you so much for joining, Jennifer Mueller. Thank you so much. You're saying Africa will never have peace unless they kick out all those invaded African decades ago. All right, Nganga George. Good morning. Yes, Dr. Matsanga will be joining me in a very short while. He's coming. Ombuye, you're saying handshake is just shaking on the same spot. It hasn't really achieved much. It is mind-boggling to hear that the Building Bridges initiative was allocated 10 billion. What? 10 billion Kenya shillings. Okay, if senior guys are taken to jail for steering corruption, then impunity could have been clobbered, but not yet. All right. Daniel Ebune, good morning. Johnson Rosemary, you're saying good morning, Patchline TV. Good morning to you indeed. And Ara Beth and Kobo. Good morning to you. Thank you so much. And Mujazi Gonza, you say today you have said the truth about Uganda. That is just my opinion. I don't understand. But you know, the democracies there is very interesting. Kenya also, we have, you know, our democracy is also very interesting, but it's very different because I think we allow to some things to an extent, and so we've had people fight for that democratic space that we seem to be enjoying right now, I think, compared to Uganda. And so what is happening right now in Uganda in regards to Bobi Wine, I think they're just giving Bobi Wine a lot of mileage, and the government does not even realize that. By him being locked in the house and being very busy on social media talking to his fans, I do not even understand. Maybe they'll cut his internet, I don't know. But, you know, there's just inciting this young generation, and, you know, yeah, that's how uprisings start. But let's hope that will be resolved very, very, very soon. And of course, in Madagascar, they're set to go for their polls very soon to elect lawmakers. Remember, they had their presidential elections that was, you know, very much contested last year in December. And of course, the opposition leader now, who was a president before, Mark Ravalomanana, you know, has now accused President Andry Rajoelina. The politics of Madagascar also is very interesting. Obuembu, you're saying, Miriam, Dr. Masanga is... he's coming, and he'll be joining me soon. And of course, these are the things we'll be looking at. Has the Kenyan handshake shaken impunity? Please, I want to hear your opinion, even as we wait for Dr. Matanga to join me in a very short bit, and he'll be looking at that and also focus on corruption in the judiciary. What is judiciary doing in terms of helping to, you know, fight corruption? For a long time, judiciary was termed as the very weak link when it comes to the fight against corruption. Is it still true? Does that line still hold? And please let us know your thoughts, and I will be reading them as we continue and as we wait for Dr. Matsanga to come to engage with us in that. And also in Africa Dispatches, Does Africa have a social contract to sustain the borrowing for infrastructure development as it is right now? I'll speak for Kenya. Our president is in China to borrow another money for phase 2 of the standard gauge railway, which is about 368 billion. That is what he went to seek for from China. Remember, we borrowed for the first phase, a total of 327 billion Kenya shillings. So the total amount is about 845 billion Kenya shillings that Kenyans basically own China, among other debts, I believe. This is only for SGR. And Kenyans, this is something that a section of Kenyans are not very happy about. Especially, the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga and the opposition leader in Kenya, and of course, in his capacity as the AU Special Envoy for Infrastructure, he joined President Uhuru Kenyatta. Of course, there was a summit that touched on that, but it is a lot of Kenyans assumed he joined President Uhuru Kenyatta to go borrow this money, and now he was being criticized because a few years ago when Kenya borrowed for the first phase of the project, which was 327 billion Kenya shillings, he was very critical, saying actually what from the figures that was what Kenya needed was around 227 billion. So the price was inflated by 100 billion Kenya shillings. And right now, he's seen to be supporting this. And so Kenyans are wondering what has changed. Is the price right this time round? What is it that is not telling us? But I believe Mr. Raila Odinga was there in his capacity as the AU a special envoy for infrastructure, and I don't know if it's just a coincidence that President Uhuru Kenyatta was also there at the same time for the borrowing. Maybe, I don't know, he's helping in the negotiations. I have no idea, but he's there for an infrastructural summit that is also taking place simultaneously in Beijing. So that is that. So when our countries go out there to borrow this much, and especially the 3 East African governments from this financial year, 2018 and 2019 financial year, they'll be spending more than $14 billion of their, tax and all that to repay debts. That is just Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. So we haven't even gone through other countries in East Africa. And of course, Kenya takes the biggest share with $8.6 billion. This is without adding the new amount that Kenya has gone to borrow and others. And the ones that we borrowed for the dams. That is also another scandal. So we keep borrowing out there to improve on our infrastructure, not just in Kenya, but across Africa. But when we go out there and borrow, do we really have the social contract to sustain the borrowing infrastructure? And have we been enslaved so much in this borrowing culture in Africa? Do we have other options? What else can we do really to improve on our infrastructure without necessarily going out there and having this massive borrowing? This is a conversation that we'll be having when Dr. Matsanga joins me on later on. And very interesting, the SGR Kenyan, the project. Of course, it started its operations last year, and it posted 10 billion in losses. Mark you, it used 12 billion for its operations. Think about that. Yes. So that is, I think, when Kenyans look at such figures, they become very jittery and they start asking questions, and they're thinking, all right, is it even worth it? So the next section of the SGR will be starting from Naivasha all the way to Kisumu, and President Uhuru Kenyatta has gone there to seek for the remainder of the money to help complete the second leg of the SGR. And of course, I was looking at Africa, news making headlines. That is in the diaspora dispatches. We'll be looking at that. Does Africa has a social contract to sustain the borrowing for infrastructure development? So if you know the figures out there, depending on which country, please share with us. What is your country doing? What is your government doing? How much are they borrowing? And when they borrow, are they really is this money channeled to whatever it's supposed to do? Is it taken to the roads? Is it building bridges? What is it doing? Or is it ending up in personal pockets like we've seen in Kenya, man? Some of these monies, when you see the figures, even when they were acquiring part of the lands for the SGR that the railway was going to be, to sit on, a lot of corruption went into that. And even right now, the person that was in charge for the Lands Commission is now has a case in the courts because a lot of people who they took the lands were never really paid, or even if they were, the money was overpriced and they never got received the money that they were supposed to be. So it was marred in a lot of corruption. So it becomes another cash cow for a few individuals out there to benefit. So please keep writing to us. And Jennifer Amula is saying, him kopo watumie in education on more engineers, technology and science on our university students. Exactly, Jennifer, I think. Winnie, you're saying, yes, it recorded 10 billion. Its first year in operation, it's recorded 10 billion in losses. You're shocked. I know. And we used 12 billion to operate it, right? Yes, but recorded 10 billion in losses. So, yeah, when you hear Kenyans being jittery about this, so that is just one of the reasons why Kenyans don't even know if it's, Yes. So anyway, thank you so much. Keep writing, and please, while you do that, let me know where you're writing us from. And of course, Algerian new interim president Abdelkader Ben Salah is really out there to get the people who were corrupt during President Bouteflika's regime. And I think it's yesterday I was reading somewhere that he's gone for 5 billionaires in Algeria who are believed to be very corrupt and during President Bouteflika's regime. And just yesterday, he's gone to sack the head of the country's biggest oil company, Sonatrach. And I don't know, I think that is why a lot of these leaders that have stuck into power do not want to leave. They're afraid because look at what is happening. They come after you. But I believe that people should take accountability of their actions. If you're in leadership, things happened during your leadership, I believe, until today, I believe somebody needs to take responsibilities over the deaths that happened in Darfur. I do not care from which side, but I think that is something that somebody should take responsibility for, and people should be charged for that. That includes President Omar al-Bashir. But when you see what is happening to him right now, does that probably explain why a lot of these leaders who have stuck to power are afraid to even relinquish the power, because maybe a lot of bad things have happened during their regime, because the more you overstay, things will tend to happen, and then now you have to sit there and protect yourself. So when they look at what is happening to President Omar al-Bashir right now, he is in a maximum prison, former president, and I think they got around 113 million US dollars in his residence over the weekend. I think he was probably planning to seek for asylum, and he was just getting his monies, ready for him to get moving, and it was too late. So when they sit and look at what is happening to him now and what is happening to Abdel Bouteflika right now in Algeria, of course he's sick. He suffered the stroke in 2013, and so as much as the new regime is not going for him personally, but is going to the people that were going after the people that were working with him, that were heads of these parastatals, that received these kickbacks, that got these, tenders probably illegally. So the new regime is really going after them. And the interim president, Abdelkader Ben Salah, is really not playing. Every day, I think he's really trying to prove that he's working, or maybe trying to appease the protesters, because the protesters also in Algeria, they have not completely left the streets. They're still on the streets, and they're saying, even the regime, the person who is leading right now, the former Speaker of Parliament, he is part of Bouteflika's regime, and they're feeling he's not the person they want. But of course, an election date has been given for July 8th, I believe, and so Let's wait for that. And so I think Algerians and Sudanese, perhaps it's time they left the street. I don't know what you think. Do you think that the protesters in Sudan have overstayed in the streets? You let me know that even as we continue to discuss what the topics of our day is as we wait for Dr. Matanga to join. Winnie Maliaka, you're saying better were the days Africa was colonized. Will Africa ever change for the better? My question and my sentiments exactly. Yeah, here, Jennifer, you're saying here mkopo ni mtego panya, poor our future generations. Yeah. So now, you know, yeah, that is that. So we should be wary about that. And you know, sometimes earlier in the year, because even in Uganda, the Auditor General and the, you know, for the central bank, the you know, raised questions in the ballooning public debt. He brought it to the Ugandan government, and he said it was not going to be sustainable, and it will borrow with care in the future, and advised, you know, Uganda to borrow with care in the future. And of course, the government came out dismissing the concerns from the central bank governor's auditor, and of course, growing indebtedness. The governor basically told them, if Uganda continues borrowing, that will be a problem in the future. And I think that is sentiments that will be shared with a lot of African countries. They keep borrowing. It's not bad, but is it really sustainable in the long run? Is it? Will the taxpayer be overburdened? Because at the end of the day, the citizens have to foot some of these bills, not some, but all of these bills. We have to pay for it. So it's a lot of concern. And when they bring that money, does it really do what it's supposed to do? That is also another question that is really worrying the citizens of Africa. So anyway, that is that. I'll take a short break, and I will, when we come back, Dr. Matanga will join me, and then we'll look at the topics of the day, which has the Kenyan handshake, shake and impunity, and of course focus on corruption in the judiciary. And on Africa Dispatches, we look at, does Africa have a social contract to sustain the borrowing for infrastructural development? So I'll take a very short break. Please don't go too far. Good morning, Africa. We'll be right back.
It is ridiculous and it is against the laws of nature that we can have somebody sitting pretty who takes home more money than the credible entrepreneur who is doing actual production of goods and services.
We always say it as it is. It is only in this country that when a thief is arrested, you hear elders from their tribe saying, he is our son and he is our thief.
If you are deviant and I call you leader,
Yes.
probably you are already a leader, but you are leading in the wrong direction.
We want to see the role of the youth
Yeah.
in the security,
Yes.
governance,
Yes.
and development.
The youth that I meet and work with here, you know, we call them the millennials and X's and Y's, this and that. They don't necessarily want to live like their fathers and grandfathers,
Yes.
do business like their fathers and grandfathers. They're more independent, they're better educated, and they're the ones that are making everything move in this region.
We look at the issues, we talk about issues that impact people's lives in Africa.
The African peoples themselves continue to cheer bad leaders, and because they cheer them on, they continue to be misled.
Let me ask you, doctor, would you rather be somebody who does not enjoy so much freedom but you are rich?
Yes.
Or you'd rather be poor who you are actually imprisoned by the poverty itself?
My goal is not to come here and say, I want the majority ownership, I want to own this, I want to own that, I want to do this. My goal is we all make money and we're all happy, and I help build a big business here.
Punchline is for Africa, with Africa, from Africa.
Good morning and welcome back. This is the Good Morning Africa show in conjunction with our sister company, South Cameroon Broadcasting Corporation and Punchline Africa Television, all the way from the Kenya's capital in Nairobi. And the topics that we're going to look at today has the Kenyan handshake shaken impunity, focus on corruption in the judiciary, and later on Africa Dispatches, does Africa have a social contract to sustain the borrowing for infrastructural development? Dr. Matanga.
Thank you very much. You've done it very well, and I have nothing to begrudge you. So thank you very much. Good morning, viewers, wherever you are in Africa. Thank you very much. I come in to make her points stronger and put there more meat on the African stories. In Sudan, time is running out between the demonstrators and the army. I think I was talking to one of the generals last night, my friend for a long time. I think they are not going to tolerate whatever is going on. They want the civilians to give them time, exactly what you have said, to prepare for a proper transition. And let them go back and prepare themselves, bring up a list of civilians. But things seem to be different. And as I told you much earlier, that this thing of the regime change, of uprising, of demonstrations, there is someone in Europe who still controls these demonstrations. And as we speak now, Zimbabwe is on the limelight. Breaking news coming from there, there is preparation for a social unrest on the streets across Zimbabwe because of the high prices of the meal, which is maize meal, and the prices hiking of petrol prices. Unpatriotic businessmen.
They have shortage of even flour.
Everything, yes. Flour and that is a target. And you see all these other countries I've been talking about, that they have a problem. They have to work very fast to make sure that, especially Zimbabwe needs very serious advice on how to handle the regime change plotters and how does it come, which format does it come. If they don't do that, they have a problem and they shouldn't blame anybody at all at this time. Now, viewers, and as we know very well, there is a handshake that has shaken impunity.
Has it?
Yes, the handshake has shaken impunity in Kenya. When Uhuru and Raila decided to do a handshake, some people are worried. Impunity was destroyed. Because you see, when these two people agree, then you must know there's something different coming in this country. There is a saying that when you see the opposition in Kenya agreeing to the government decision,
be worried.
Be worried. So let me tell you frankly.
So who should be worried?
Among the people, I think the people who did not handshake, the people who did not see this coming, the people who thought Raila and Uhuru will always be enemies. If you don't adjust quickly, the train will leave you.
It's been over a year. Why is it taking so long for these people to adjust? No,
they don't want to adjust. You can see the type of acrimony I have had on my social media the whole night. So many people were saying you used to insult Raila. Why are you supporting him? I said no. Raila is not now doing a Kenyan job. Raila is going to China because there is a big conference where several African heads of state, several ministers of Africa are sitting down to look at the infrastructure on the roads, the Belt and the Road Conference. And he's got, I have the letters, copies of the letters on invitation from AU. As an investigative journalist, you have to check on things. Who has invited Raila? So when I was telling Kenyans Raila has been invited by the Chinese government, is not going with Uhuru. It is a coincidence that Uhuru is also going to the conference. But Raila has gone officially as AU High Commissioner for Infrastructure in Africa. So when you look at that, you check down, you see how impunity has been disturbed. Because some of these people kept on actually some of them kept on. Raila himself has sent, I even took photographs very late at night.
There it is.
When he was going.
Yes.
And then I said, this guy has gone to China in a different plane. There were people thinking they boarded a plane together with Uhuru Kenyatta. So, look, we have a very big problem in Africa. Impunity. Some of these guys who wanted the president of the Republic of Kenya to sleep while they are looting are not very happy. The looters are not happy. The looters have decided that they have to spoil the handshake. So the handshake has has disturbed, has shaken impunity. Those who used to loot cannot loot because there is pressure coming. Too many combined in parliament. There is opposition also working with the government to make sure that you will not hide. Even if you want to mash your numbers, you can't mash your numbers more than what people want. People want corruption to go out. And therefore, some people are finding it very difficult. If it goes the way it is going, we might have some people actually abandoning the government voluntarily. Because that's what I see coming. You cannot stay in the government while you are opposing the same government. You cannot stay in the president. The president is saying don't do campaigns, you are doing them. The president said don't do corruption, you are doing corruption. The president said don't threaten DCI, you are threatening them. The president said don't disunite. You see the churches. Have you seen what the churches have done? The churches have done something very different.
I saw it on social media yesterday and I thought, is it just a propaganda? And then to read it on the papers, I'm thinking, okay, they said they'll continue to accept the money from the politicians.
Yeah, but now
they're giving with a clean
And
heart.
you remember I was talking about the churches, and I said, if my Anglican church headed by Bishop Olesapiti, if it accepts this money, I will never appear there. And you see my bishop has come out. The Anglican bishop stood out yesterday and written a 5-pager and said any ASK church that accepts money from, corrupt money from any politician, that one will be dealt with the regulations of the diocese and the Anglican Church regulations.
And also something very important, he said also that institutions charged with leading war against corruption should be supported. That is what the Anglican Church of Kenya
exactly
said, yes.
I don't know why some of these bishops from American angle of religion, preachers, some of these who are actually encouraging people to come to church, because you know very well if these guys go to the platforms outside the church, they will be stoned. People are getting angry every day. They will be stoned. You can't be having 20 million which you are carrying in your car's convoy, which is when someone has not got even 200,000 shillings or 200 shillings in the pocket. He has 10 children. He has children to pay school fees for. He has food to eat. They will be stoned. So handshake has shaken impunity in terms of corruption. There's some shake. Because had there been no handshake, we would not have gone far in fighting corruption. We know it has helped quite a lot. I know you are not convinced, but that is the truth. If Raila was on the other side, we would not have been able to fight the way we are fighting corruption.
I agree on that.
It has pushed the Jubilee government in the fight against corruption, because there is supportive mood. There is supportive mood. Because on the other side, all what they did, they could just come and say, we don't agree with that. We don't agree with that. You remember there is a time when Raila and other people went to court to stop Kidero from going to jail. You saw that. So this is not happening anymore. After the handshake, each one crosses his own cross.
Yes.
That is the spirit that can stop a social upheaval in any African country.
Yes.
So coming back to the handshake, has it done any harm? Yes. It has done harm to the impunities. Those impunity make, those guys, the mafia, the cartels.
Who operate in impunity.
In impunity. Those who work with darker forces to steal money, to siphon government parastatus, the handshake has dealt them a blow. They are no longer having any space where they will hide. Yes, Miriam.
Okay.
Any questions?
Yes, indeed. But also on this, I think the reason why Kenyans were very up and they don't understand why Raila Odinga the other time, especially on, they don't understand that he's there for, maybe now they get it, that Raila Odinga is there for a completely, in his capacity as the AU Special Envoy for Infrastructure, but they didn't get that. But I think why they were coming and criticizing Raila's move to go when they thought he was going with President Kenyatta is because during the first phase of the SGR, when Kenyan borrowed, he thought the government had inflated the prices with over 100 billion Kenyan shillings, and so he was not in support of that. But now they're seeing he's supporting that, and he's supportive of the SGR new money that will complete the Naivasha-Kisumu rail, and so they're wondering what has changed this time for Raila.
What has changed is Raila is now in the same boat of infrastructural development in Africa. And there is no country, when we come to the second topic, and I want to thank Mr. James Drummer from London watching, my good friend, a very great friend of mine. Thank you for watching. Let me say, if there is no borrowing, if no country in Africa, if the country does not borrow, there is no country in the world that does not borrow. There is no country in the world. Even after the Second World War, Britain had to get somehow money to build houses, to build infrastructure. The infrastructure that we see in Britain today is an infrastructure that came as a result of loans and hard work, taxation from the local people, for the government to collect tax, enough tax to build the underground, the canals, the Thames, and everything. This has been a long journey. No country can develop in Africa without infrastructure. So those who are condemning President Uhuru Kenyatta for going to look for more in order to put structures for any future government to work on. If roads, those days we used to take a long time to go to Mombasa. It might not be profitable now, but when it is completely complete, you will see what type of trade we shall have on this SGR all the way from Kampala or Kigali. You will see the number of people leaving home and saying, Madam, I'm not going to change the train. I'm delivering my goods in Kampala. I will be on the same return plane back to Nairobi. And he would have got the goods to the person handling them at the station. He comes back to Nairobi. He continues with production. That train, that railway is going to increase a lot of production. People are not seeing it.
Yes, a lot of production, but also when you listen to the governor of Mombasa and what is really happening now in Mombasa, and I was there just a few days ago, there seems to be killing the industries in Mombasa as it is. So as much as it is increasing productivity and in the other parts of the country, as it will do perhaps in Naivasha and going towards and in Nairobi, but in Mombasa things are different. It's like the economy there, it used to depend on the port so much.
But things have to move.
With the introduction
the Mombasa,
of the dry port.
Let me be very honest.
Yes.
The Mombasa of Fort Jesus is not the Mombasa of today. The goods were being handled in Fort Jesus.
Fort Jesus no.
Is the upper part.
The Bandari side, yes.
But now they are being handled in another place. So Joho should know it will remove. The dry port does not remove jobs. You must see what there is still work for people at the port.
Actually, it has a lot.
Yeah, but
because now they're straight. So a lot of
it is not straight. You have to strip. You can't strip. You can't strip in here. There is no stripping equipment in Naivasha.
Naivasha yet.
Naivasha is just clearing.
Not yet, but now the clearing farms are closing shops.
But that is what you cannot rule it out.
Yes, so those are just collateral damages.
But what people don't know is this. When the goods come from the hinterland, where do they go? Unless you are poorly managed in the reasoning of economics, you still have jobs. Those clearing agents have to take the goods on the ships. They know which ship has docked, when it will dock, when it will depart. You don't, you lose one part and again in the other part. So these are some of the explanations that Kenyans need to understand, because every Kenyan is now out thinking that we are borrowing badly, the jobs are going down. No, infrastructure, if the goods come from Uganda, our coffee will run faster to Mombasa in 24 hours. We are on the ship, the days will go down. The days, the number of days for the ship to reach Europe lessen because you have finished.
Yes, the process is shorter.
It's short. From Mombasa, it will take maybe another 10 days, 20 to 20 days. They are already, your food stuff is in London. It's being eaten in huge numbers, while another one is going. If you have those going every day, coming 24 hours, the coffee reaching Mombasa, the agents will work 24 hours. That is a gain, a plus from what they took from the dry port. Are we together?
I'm following.
So viewers have to follow so that they understand that we are not, the jobs are not being lost. The jobs are being created.
The jobs are being in other parts of the country, but on that side, I'm talking as an insider. I understand that, and I have proved that some jobs have been lost. But anyway, not so much.
No, it is true. You are right. Some jobs are being lost, but
others are being created.
Any good planner should also plan that the goods from interior will go where.
Yes. All right.
You know, you can't bring goods from train and dump them where? Those same clearing agents in bulk, those clearing agents will clear the same jobs.
Yes.
If you have, the only thing is you have missed the collection of this money.
From there.
Yes. But you also now miss...
Which was a very big income for Mombasa County.
For Mombasa people, it is true.
Yes.
But then you can gain it through Mombasa can do some other activities. You know, Mombasa can enlarge to handle bigger ships of other countries.
And maybe start seeing ways they can benefit from the blue economy in other ways.
Exactly.
Yes.
There is marines, there is fishing that can, you can't take fish to a dry port.
Yes.
Why can't we export fish? Why can't those clearing agents look for deep frozen ships to be coming in huge numbers? There are so many things. It's only that, ma'am, there are no people looking at some other alternatives. But truly, in politics, each politician fights for his own people.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. You have some people who have come in there.
Yes, our viewers, I think Jennifer Mula, thank you so much. She's kept us company since the beginning of the show, and you're saying, why not intensify railways inside Africa, if not for draining Africa? Kweli kuna fama na mlaji. Please, fafanua tafadhali. Kukopa na kukopa. Kukopa tunakopa. Kulipa tutalipaje? Sisi tutalipa. Tax imeongezwa. We are paying through our nose. So that is that. And some other news also, of course, we talked about Sudan, and just before we get to the diaspora dispatches. And right now, Bobi Wine is under house arrest.
You want me to speak about it?
I don't know your thoughts about that.
She under house arrest for?
Because he, for causing, what do they say? For disrupting the public order. So his movement has been restricted from yesterday. Yes, so that is that.
Let's take a break.
Let's take a break, and then when we come back, we're going to look at the diaspora dispatches, and does Africa have a social contract to sustain the borrowing for infrastructure development? So please don't go too far. We'll be looking at that and more news from across the continent.
Thank you very much, viewers. Welcome back to the second and the final part of our Good Morning Africa. This morning, we shall look at the social contract. Does Africa have a social contract to sustain, one, the borrowing, two, the repayments of the money that we are paying? Most of the problems, before I'll take about another few minutes explaining, the problems that Africa has is the breakdown in the social contract that we had after independence. In the 60s, when the colonial masters left this continent, we still had the letter being posted through the post office. We still used to pay our fees through the postal orders. We still, everywhere in Africa, whether you are in Cameroon, whether you are in Nigeria, whether you are in DRC Congo, whether you are where, whether you are in Sudan, whichever part of Africa you were, after independence, there was a social contract. Why Britain and Spain, Portugal, Italy went out to colonize is because they had a social contract. Back at their homes, their people had free medical treatment, had payments for those who don't have jobs. There is an allowance you get as a person who does not have a job. Are these things in Africa today? In Uganda, for example, after the departure of the colonial master, we maintained the status quo of the social structures that the British had left for us. Schools open at a certain time, close at a certain time, half term the same time. You must have the 4 weeks or 4 months. You must close in order the brain to work. We broke all this contract. In Kenya, the same. In Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe continued to be under colonial yoke. That's why you see the rate of literacy is highest in Zimbabwe. Because they had the Ian Smith up to 1980. There was education that was envied by many African countries. There was tourism that was the best for the continent. Most of us in African countries, in the French-speaking countries, like in Cameroon, there was that semblance. They were struggling for their Amazonia, but there was that sense. That's why you find the most of Amazonians are the most educated people in this in Cameroon. They went to school. The social services were working. Everything was working. Your letter would reach you without somebody opening it to see how much, what is written inside, then return. If there was money, they take it. That social contract in Africa is lacking. Now, the leaders going across to borrow money in order to bring it back to us in Africa must first make a social contract workable in Africa. If the social contract is not, the social structures are not in Africa, however much you do the infrastructure, however much you borrow, you are not going to appease people at all. Part of the problem of social unrest in Africa comes as a result of the breakdown of social structures. Look at what has taken place in Sudan. When you have no social structure to address the problems of hunger, of bread, of flour, of sugar missing, that it will bring a social upheaval. Look at what has happened in Cameroon. You have no social structure at all. The social contract is the one that binds the people where we go to borrow the money. For example, we go to China. Have we ever asked ourselves why Chinese, 30 years ago, Chinese were the poorest people on this planet Earth? They were borrowing even money. They were even asking Russia to give them some money. Today, the Chinese are the people giving us money. But why are the Chinese lending us money? Why? Where have they come from? What miracle has China done? So African countries need to start evaluating and sitting down to review. Why do we go to China? Why are we not going to Britain? Why are we not going to France? Why are we not going to America? We are going there to America because the conditions, we are not going to America because the conditions in America are difficult for you to obtain that loan. Because they would like to attach with a social contract. You are taking our money, but we would like to know how you are going to use this money. Is it going to be used in arms? Are you going to buy arms? Mr. Paulo Bia, are you buying arms from the money we want to give you? So part of the problem why China or why Africa is falling into this trap, which everybody, because I'm going to address everybody's concerns, today I'm determined, and ask any questions. Those who don't know, don't yap, just ask me. Look at what is going on in Africa now. Every African country is in Beijing today. Why have they run away from France? Why have they run away from Britain? Because Britain now has moved from a social structure to a developed structure. A social structure at home in Britain. If you don't have employment, they give you money for not being employed. How many countries in Africa give their people money because they are not employed? I want to ask every African country watching me, anybody in Africa listening to me, in your country, are you being paid money because you are not being employed? Have you registered that you are not employed and the government gives you money in the post office on Friday, or there is a ministry that looks for people who are not employed and gives them money? These are the questions that we want to answer and be candid about our Africa. There is a lot of clamor about this whole thing of borrowing money from China. Many people in Kenya are up in the arms. The whole of last week and the last evening, everybody was lambasting President Uhuru Kenyatta. But they are not lambasting themselves. Why? They have become receivers of dirty money in churches. How does a social contract break down? The social contract breaks down when you don't even know the 10 commandments. You have broken the social contract. The social contract breaks down when you don't know a Quran. You don't follow the regulations of a Quran. Tell me how you are going to be a good person in the world when you don't know what the Quran says. Don't kill another person. The Bible says don't kill another person. When the British and the French or Spaniards or Portuguese came to this continent, the first thing they taught us is to obtain a social contract. What was that social contract? Religion. In all these places of Africa, there is a cathedral, a church, a mosque, or any other institution, a Buddhist, or they are there signifying a social contract. First, to get people to have a social contract, you need to have what we call a religious mind. The morals. They wanted to tame our morals. They wanted to get our morals to size because our morals were gone. Today, Africa's morals are finished. Today, no country in Africa can pay its own youth who are not working. Today in Africa, there is no election you can hold without 200 people dead. Today in Africa, there is no contract you can do without payment of kickback. Today in Africa, the rate of murders have increased. The younger girls being cut to pieces, the lovers. That is all a resultant factor of lack of a social contract. Because if there were a social contract, you will have social workers checking on the people who are about to commit suicide. People, you would have community workers who are checking on people who might be planning to do terrorism. We don't have those. We could have local policing. We don't have. So that all those factors are built up into one small unit called a social contract. The social contract in Africa, given we don't have it, shall we have this money used properly? That is the big thing that is eating every African. Borrowing, every country has to borrow. But when you borrow, when there is no social contract, you are increasing more problems to yourself. Time has come, as President Uhuru is doing, the fight against corruption back at home sets social contract benchmarks. If we can fight corruption, remove corruption from the Kenyan soil, if you borrow that money, the road will move faster. I saw somebody yesterday on another television station lamenting that his road has taken 37 years. The road going to Kitale through Boom, someplace, actually it was Honorable Senator Elachi. She said the road there has never been done for almost 37 years. Now, if you have that road, the contractors, how many contractors, how many governments in 37 years, how many governments have gone down? From Kenyatta's days, Moi, Kibaki, we have had those governments. People have not eaten money on the road. This is a social problem. It's a very serious problem. If we are going to hike the prices of food, do you blame whom do you blame? Why do prices of food hike? Because bad roads. If you have bad roads, it will cost you more to bring the goods to town. Therefore, you must increase the price for the fuel, for the everything. This is a social problem which becomes a social contract. Many people in Africa are complaining about Chinese. They are saying Chinese have come. They are even roasting maize in Zambia. Chinese are roasting maize in one of your streets. I just want to tell you frankly that in Britain, Chinese are selling DVDs. That's the United Kingdom. Chinese are selling, are doing the same. The number of Chinese goods in the United Kingdom, Chinese hawkers who come to your door. If you open up your window, you see the Chinese. If I'm talking on facts, I'm talking on facts. If there is anybody in Britain who will say there are no Chinese there, you don't find them with DVDs, you don't find them with merchandise, which you cannot obtain from Liverpool Street in London, or from, Shepherd Bush, or from these places, all these where we Africans go to buy our things. We have Chinese now. All the goods have come. All the Chinese themselves have arrived in person. They are also doing hawking in London. They are everywhere in the streets of New York. So anybody who is complaining in Africa that Chinese have come to take our jobs, these Chinese are everywhere. Now, why are they here? It's because of our bad manners. You know why? Bad manners. We businessmen from this country in Africa, we used to load ourselves. If you see a plane leaving Jomo Kenyatta Airport, all people from Nigeria are on it to go and buy goods. And when they reach China, they leave their details. They even tell the Chinese how much they are going to get the other side. I'm telling you, they tell the Chinese that, these containers, I want 200, and I'm going to make it so much. They start having beer, go to nightclubs and start talking. I can give you a very serious example that there were no visas in Britain at all. There were no visas. But it is the Nigerian brothers who brought us visas in Britain. All Commonwealth countries used to enter United Kingdom without a visa. But the Nigerians misused it. That one I have to tell the truth. They misused the visa. They started forging so many things. They started doing a lot of, look at that. We have Chinese coming here because we have told these Chinese there is a free place. We have not put serious safeguards on the ground, Miriam. There are no laws. If they come here, they come in plenty. And we are allowing them to come as tourists. When they reach here, we don't check whether the tourists left or they didn't. So whom are you blaming? You must blame ourselves. You must blame the immigration officers who know how many 50 tourists arrived in Jomo Kenyatta Airport. How many have returned to Mombasa, to China? That's why you find the Chinese are selling maize, shoes. Two factors work on us as Africans. We go there and tell them how much we can earn out of these things. So as soon as you leave, they also say, let me go to Africa and get Miriam. Miriam will say, you and me, we can sit down and create a company called Miriam and Chung Cheng Kwan Company Limited. This is the problem happening here. And don't blame these Chinese that they are going to go away. We are actually going to be the way we are. I've told you in Britain, they are there. The best food in the United Kingdom is Chinese restaurant. There's no girlfriend you can love in UK who will want you to take him to beef burger.
Steak.
No, big steak. Oh, steak. Take me steak house. No, that is gone. The best restaurants where you find every high-class person dressed in the perfumes and everywhere in Paris, in Copenhagen, in Amsterdam is Chinese. I'm telling you the truth. Because all of us have now shifted. There is one factor that has kept the Chinese, wherever they go. They have got a common factor. They have one social life. They have a social contract. If they are somewhere, they eat together. They know they eat 1 meal in a day. We people who are trained by the British, including British themselves, we eat 4 meals in a day. And the social contract in Britain gives you money for the 4 meals. If you are eating 1 meal in a day in Britain, you can be arrested by police or social services. If they know there's someone there starving in that house who is begging food. Actually, in Britain, if you go to beg salt from your neighbor, as soon as he closes the door, he will pick the phone and call the police. I think there is a problem in my next neighborhood. He came here to borrow salt. Because there is a social structure in Britain that you don't walk without money. There is a rule. If you are caught with no money in the pocket, you are either going to break a bank or you are about to kill people. So the police will take you to custody and try to find out why you did not have money at that particular time. That is the law. That's a social contract. There are people checking on each other. Is there anybody checking on each person here? Is there anybody checking on the signposts that the Chinese put on these roads? Can we go and see how many lamps have been stolen on these roads? Can we see for ourselves before we start condemning the Chinese? We might say we have a point. The Chinese have come to Kirinyanga River Road. They are selling all the things. It is our problem as Africans. We Africans have the problem. We invite these guys. Look at Paul Robia. He has brought Chinese in Yaoundé. They are cutting timber. They have brought all the sawmills. They are cutting timber, gold, everything. They are taking it. Because the rate of consumption in China is high. What we buy from China today is surplus. We have no surplus in Africa. Where is the surplus? Where is the surplus? If one African country is laughing at the other, if one president in Africa is laughing at the other, saying that one borrows every day, if the other one is telling the other one that we must overthrow the other one, can we have a social contract? We don't have a social contract to sustain the repayments and the borrowing that we are taking. That is a point, medium, and everybody must understand, be prepared that at this time we must repay. And that is also the most important thing is that you need infrastructure for development. So it is up to us Africans, whether you are in Uganda, whether you are in Zimbabwe, whether you are in Kenya, whether you are in Tanzania, you have to start thinking. You have to start knowing that in a global market, these Chinese will roast maize near your home. These Chinese will also want to engage in social activities like dancing, like eating meat at cigarette, and other activities which which end up after dancing. You have to be prepared that as much as we go there to borrow their money, they have not refused us to borrow money. Why are you refusing them to have fresh air? They are just having fresh air. Why don't we just put restrictions that as you come here, you must either come to be a student to learn Swahili. You will be very shocked that very soon we shall have Chinese Swahili teachers. In Kenya, there are some Chinese who have already learned a fluent Swahili. They can write it, they can talk it, they can go to classrooms. In fact, we shall have a very big, hard-working class of people in 10 years to come. If we have Chinese here, we shall turn all these, swamps into rice-growing areas. You should not look at the short term of myopism of saying they are buying they are taking our businesses. I saw one woman this morning shouting on TV that they are coming to take our businesses. No, just learn from how they work. For us, as soon as it is morning, after you have eaten breakfast, when it is approaching midday, the stomach starts grumbling. Chinese stomach does not grumble. He has only waiting to eat noodles. Noodles. For us, you have got to eat one full chicken, one full thigh of meat in a sagrit, and then pour there water, or order for beer, then order for this, go to the toilet. Chinese don't waste time, they work hard. That is, I'm going to be very honest and blank to Africans. We are lazy. We are very lazy people. We have copied a social system which is not ours. Another factor which, Miriam, I have to talk about is the constitution. You see the way we have done our constitutions in Africa. We have just gone to London and cut and pasted our constitution here in Kenya. This Kenyan constitution, does it fit you? Does this Kenyan constitution fit you? Tell me. Tell me. Is there a constitution have you seen a Chinese constitution? Where is it? Where is the Chinese constitution? Show me one Chinese constitution. Show me one Chinese constitution that China has a constitution. Show me. It's not there. We have borrowed a constitution of America, placed it on the people who are not even aware of some sections of the constitution. You are struggling for rights. Rights to demonstrate, Mr. Bob Wine. But the constitution, you only know that you have a right to assemble, not knowing that if you are to assemble, you need also a permit from the authorities who are the custodians of the constitution. Because in your newscast, you brought the question of Bob Wine being in custody. Preventive, supposedly to be called preventive custody.
House arrest, yes.
Preventive. I don't know preventing him from who. Maybe from either from people following him. Because if he is left to walk in the town, it will be like the Besige. So we have such constitutions in Africa. They break our social contract. They destroy our social contract. Let me ask you, Miriam, in most of the houses in Nairobi, for example, if you go to these buildings in Nairobi and ask for whether the workers know health and safety regulations, if the fire breaks,
they don't.
Out of 10, on half.
You'll be lucky to get one.
You'll be lucky to get one worker.
That is the truth.
In all these government offices, including the president's office. Go there now. Go there now. Is that a social contract? Do we know the rights? Do we know that every building should have a health and a safety regulation, a cylinder with fire in case fire breaks? Have we not destroyed a social contract? There is a full ministry of health and safety. I want you to tell me whether Okutan, is it Okitan? Someone called the Minister for Social Services. How many times do you see, how many times do Kenyans sit per week to learn about health and safety? How many? How many? You say there is social contract. We blame Chinese. How many people were told that the meteorological department, the rain has delayed? Nairobi City, yesterday, 2 days ago, in Nairobi, you need a car and a boat on Chipande Road. You leave your Range Rover up here and get on a boat, then reach town. So you now blame a Chinese? No. I would like to know, do you blame a Chinese for the disaster of a drainage? The governor of this city was told that there will be rain and heavy rains will come. Nobody unblocked the drainage. In Britain, when the snow is about to come, they spend 1 month unblocking the entire London. I'm telling you, there is nowhere that whole Europe you can find flooding here and there, where there was maybe debris from someplace blocked. The whole of Europe works and goes to Atlantic Ocean. The whole of England, United Kingdom, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. It pours the water. The water flows through. My dear sister, the water flows through. Now, in Nairobi, you need to buy two things. You need to buy a car and a boat. Put a rack on top, because you don't know where you will have to, sail. You must park the car and start sailing on the water to reach the central district of Nairobi. Where is the social contract? Why has it broken down? Are there no workers being paid? Are we not paying workers here? Don't we pay workers on a daily basis? Why have we lost a moral obligation? The social contract. If I'm wrong, tell me. We borrow this money. The President of the Republic of Kenya is doing his best to lay a framework for infrastructure in the future. How the Kenyans will pay, it depends, or Ugandans will pay, depends on how we become very socially, very careful, how we utilize, how we don't steal the signposts. You go to that road from here to Nakuru. Let's come again. You find gentlemen climbing those lamps. There were old signs when Kibaki did these roads in 2003, 2004. I was here, I traveled all the way to Lodwar. With Sky News, we were doing a program. And then up to Malaba. Before the road had not reached those areas. But behind every place where the roads the Chinese had finished, signposts, very good signposts, showing you are now zeroing, you are now nearing a corner, a bend. Slow your speed. Those signposts were there, Miriam. Today, if you go to people's houses, you find the real writings that were on. And the people have made it into a cooker.
What?
They are using it for cooking food, and then you are blaming the Uhuru Kenyatta. Yeah, let's be very honest. Let's be very shrewd to each other. You are blaming for Uhuru Kenyatta. When you went up, you stole the signpost. Then a lorry comes, it doesn't know there's a bend because the signpost has been removed. The lorry crashes, killing people. Then you say the government is not police. All this rubbish. Where our own problem is Africa. How many people climbed those poles and removed those signposts? If you go to Chikope, all those areas, and start inspecting people's homes around there, you will find that all those cooking stoves, the signposts come down. Go to people's houses, you will find all the bulbs that people were laying down for electricity to be in some areas. These poles have collapsed. They have collapsed. Social contract. Why we are going to China is we cannot meet the standards of the social contract of countries like France. I'll give you one example. The French said they will do the railway between Tanga and Mwanza, the pipeline, and they told Uganda, don't waste your time, we shall do the pipeline. They told Tanzania, this will be the quickest. But because France, back in France, however bad they are, there's a social contract. However, people are asking why demonstrators in France can stay on the street every Saturday. Because there is a social contract. Their rent is being paid. If you have no work, your rent will be paid. You'll get you'll go sign and say, I lost work. Then they will give you 200 euros per week or per 2 weeks. You are able to pay your rent of about 70,000 euros per week and survive. You can stay on a picketing line. That's why you see the up unrest which is in Khartoum, Miriam, is paid. There's someone who has paid for that unrest. How are people in Khartoum paying their rents? Don't they have landlords? How are the landlords surviving in Khartoum? Tell me. It's because someone is paying. So when you come here, when Tanzania asked for money to finish the railway, the French told them, no, before you do this, we want you to sign here that you will allow lesbian and gay marriages. Because in Europe, it has moved to a social structure that there is marriage between man and man. The social structures in Europe started hundreds of years ago, over 1,000 years ago. They have metastasized into a system, isn't it? And it is bigger to a level that now a man and a woman, a man and a man can marry. A woman and a woman can marry. In Africa, it's impossible. That's why you find it is very difficult. Okay. SGR, which you talk about, becomes a very big problem. The SGR people eat 1 meal a day. The Africans who are working in SGR want to eat 4 meals in a day. The Chinese said, our restaurant, we can eat 1 meal a day. But when we allow our African guys to come here, every time you find him cooking coffee in that same restaurant. That's why the Chinese on the SGR of Kenya decided to have their own restaurant. You saw there was a clip on the newspaper. So when you have some of these things like they are, Miriam, you don't blame the Chinese. Yes. Ourselves. You are busy in the kitchen cooking. The Chinese cooks once, drinks once, brushes once, is gone, is working. So we must be prepared to be with these people for a long time to come. These people, Kenyans who are going on TV crying, oh, Chinese are here. They are here because they are following what has come this way. We are ourselves to blame because we have not put down the structures of accountability to follow the money that we are borrowing. Look at how Swazur ate the SGR. How much money was lost on the SGR. Not because SGR was very expensive. SGR was itself was very, very, very cheap. But the amount of money that went in SGR is through fraudulent payments that Swazur and his group managed to take millions and billions of shillings out. If you look at the railway between Ethiopia and Djibouti, people complain and compare that railway with other railway. I want to tell you, as a scholar in Africa, I should not compare that because there is a problem. In Djibouti, Miriam, free land. Ethiopia, the land is for the government. Djibouti, the land is for the government. There was no compensation. Once they measure like this, you find yourself in that thing of you have to look for your way to go away. Because that's not, the government can only help you to settle iron sheets, you go. Here in Kenya, you must pay everybody. That's why this SGR in Kenya was very expensive. Even to pass in government land itself was a long journey. Mtata went to town, to the courts, because he said the animals, as if Mtata can look after one lion. Can he look after one lion? Give Mtata one lion to feed per day. Eh? These are all social difficulties that Africa finds itself in. I give you time to ask questions. Ask me now.
Because Mtata cannot really feed one lion per day. The lion will feed on him. I think it will be dinner for the lion. But very pertinent questions there and issues that you've really raised and you've addressed, Dr. Matsanga, that are very critical if at all Africans we want to be liberated and we want to see ourselves develop. And I think that was a very candid conversation, and I'll call it a lecture.
Yes.
It really touched very important matters that plague us, not just as Kenyans, but indeed across Africa. And the issue of a social contract, and the reason why Africa has turned into to go to China, because if we go to Europe and to the US, as you have explained very well, then they'll require for us to have a social contract.
Yes.
What is our human rights records? How is it? The
now,
governance in our
Mama,
country,
now you are talking.
our democratic space.
So I hope students, my students who are benefiting from this lecture,
yes,
you have got it. Those are the points,
yes,
Miriam, you have picked them. Yes.
So they'll want to assess that. How are we doing in terms of addressing some of those matters before they just give us the money, because them they just can't. You must have a level of accountability also that a lot of our governments really lack accountability. They don't want to be accountable. But even as you have mentioned, yes, the money was brought, especially in the Kenyan scenario. And as you have seen, even before the SGR, the track were finished, some people already taking the railways, the tracks, part of it. Even the president had to give a riot act and said anybody found trying to destroy the railway will be shot dead. He actually gave a shoot to kill order. Before it was finished, some Kenyans already...
We are stealing. No, honestly, I'd forgotten that point.
True.
President Uhuru Kenyatta himself
gave a shoot to kill.
Went on platform.
It was very shameful.
Shoot to kill,
yes,
those who are stealing, yes, the railway parts.
Yes.
So we lack a social contract, and we blame the president. Whom are we blaming? Why do you blame Uhuru? That Uhuru has done what? Should Uhuru now teach you not to eat? Should Uhuru tell you eat 1 meal in a day? You'll say he's violating my human rights. But Chinese, there is a command structure which says you eat only noodles, rice. And when you go to Africa, you trade and you do the work, finish, come back.
And you've mentioned the work ethics. I think that is something also maybe we can learn from and see how is it that they're able to go somewhere and be successful and to fit in and actually work hard, because they work very hard. Is that something that we lack as Africans? Maybe we should access our work ethics, and maybe instead of condemning them as we have been, try to learn from them. How is it that China has been very successful in a very short span of time compared to other countries, and right now it's leading in terms of industry across the world? How can we learn from China? Maybe that is the question.
Look, China, where Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta are now,
yes,
don't hold elections. But the two gentlemen who have gone there now are talking about elections. Where are elections in China? Have you ever heard of an MP? Do we have MPs? A few days ago in Kenya, we had MPs that they are going to go and learn how to repay debt in Paris. And they took pictures in business class. Why don't you repay when you are in economy class? Is that you blame China? Why don't we blame ourselves? Moses Kuria, who used to travel on a bicycle, now sends pictures on a business class.
On a bicycle?
Moses Kuria used to beg for lunch. Now he travels in. I am honest. And that is how I will be. These are the people who have brought Uhuru Kenyatta problems. Look at them. Ask Moses, how did you get money to be traveling in a business class? You have no children who can send you money. Your children are still young. None of them has grown and married anywhere to give you money for you to be able to upgrade yourself to a business class. How did you get money to travel in a business class? And then you come back and take pictures, send to the poor Kenyans who are paying for your salary in that place. Look at that, Miriam. It pains.
Yes.
We have lacked the morals.
We have our ethical.
When a president reaches a point to say, shoot to kill.
Anybody seen
carrying
the train? Yes. And even the signage. In fact, whatever you say, it's true.
My God.
Along Thika Road.
Go to Thika Road.
Yes.
Stand in Kawandani, Kawa what, Kawa what.
Yes.
You will find people using sigiri. This is stove. Traditional stoves. With markings 80 kilometers per hour.
No way.
Yes! Yes!
Such a shame.
It's a shame.
Yes.
Miriam, it's a shame. Africa, we do very shameful things.
It's a shame. Yes, I think we should look back to ourselves. Are we our own enemies? Are we the ones who are hindering our own development? Even as we complain about how much money our governments are out there borrowing, are we able to even take care of the little that we have? Are we able to protect whatever we have in terms of even in our infrastructure and other things that we have as a country? We lack that. Is it the lack of patriotism? We don't feel like this is my country. I owe it as a citizen of this country to make sure I play part in protecting what is it that this country is offering to me.
Yes, it is lack of patriotism. Miriam, how many social workers do we have in Kenya on paper?
Very few.
How many community workers do we have in Kenya on paper? Hundreds of thousands, though, or hundreds in each county. There is a district social work under the Minister of Ikuta Tan, the minister, I don't know him, CS for social labor. Ask that minister, how many houses has he stopped from functioning in Nairobi City because they don't have fire extinguishers?
And they don't meet the safety standards.
How many workers has he visited? How many workers here, even including serious officers, who have checked whether a cylinder of its gas extinguisher has liquid? Patriotism, as you said.
It's lacking.
We have lacked it. We blame Chinese. Have you seen Chinese dying easily? Where are they? No, have you seen them dying easily?
They're very tenacious, no.
They know what to eat, when they will eat, and they go back. For us, you eat until they call you. You go and look for your MP. You find him in a nightclub, 7 o'clock a.m. in the morning.
Eating.
Then he's leaving that nightclub to enter a helicopter to go and look for the deputy president somewhere.
Okay.
Do you blame Chinese? Do you blame Chinese?
No.
When you go to China to buy, why do you reveal your secrets? How many Chinese have come here and revealed how they were able to make those good roads? They want to make the roads and go away. Have you seen a Chinese training group here? No, show me training camp here, Chinese. Iko happy?
They don't even hold workshops.
But for us Africans, even in London, we now tell a story how you can wash this suka quickly. You have been given a job in a hotel, washing them like this, and then you can hide it down. When the boss comes, your contract, it is dead. We have spoiled. We used to have no visa to enter London. We now have visas to enter London because we started telling everybody how to forge, how fraudulently to obtain visas to enter London. The British looked at that, went back. Nigeria was singled out. They blocked us. Everybody. Now to go to Britain, you need to fill documents, half a suitcase.
Yeah, we are our own best enemies. In conclusion, we have
look at the problem in Amazonia. What happens in Amazonia? You mean there are no Africans who can see? There's guys who are meeting because Egypt, because Sudan, because Libya. Why are they not meeting? Because there is Amazonia.
Social contract.
Social contract. They don't see Amazonia as human beings. Because the French have told them, don't touch that country. Why are they not meeting? Because of Amazonia. Why? And they are meeting because of General Haftar, Khalifa Haftar, and they're meeting because of Sudan. The Security Council of Africa, I saw our Minister of Foreign Affairs there. Why is she not raising an issue with Amazonia? Because the French have told them, don't talk about Cameroon. Is this Africa? Is this Africa? Tell me. Hakuna. We need a serious revolution. Is this Africa? That's African Union? The people in Cameroon are dying. Because in this African Union, there's no social contract itself. Does African Union teach us to avoid coups? Does it teach us to avoid military coups? Is there an academy where you teach governance so that the military coups don't come? What creates this social upheaval? What is creating the upheaval in Africa? It's bad governance. Then African Union is part of the bad governance. It is like taking a case of age limit in the Uganda Supreme Court. When the judges are looking for they are also saying increase our age.
Madness.
So that's, look at that. Uganda itself.
Yes.
The age limit in Uganda, the judges themselves, Katurebe, all of them, they want the age limit of retirement to be increased to 75. Now you are asking the same judges about Museveni's age limit. You think they will be in your favor? Why don't we think with brains? We are thinking with our stomachs. Why this boy I have liked this man in Uganda called Mabilis. And I'm going to support him because we are doing intellectual work. Let's challenge. Mr. Mabilis, you have my support.
Who is he for the viewers?
The viewers, the guy who is challenging the Supreme Court of Uganda, that they had interest They did not declare their public interest, their interest with the president.
Okay.
And we shall get them there. That's a good, I like I challenged the ICC. I am a very good man who supports such move. You know, some people think that by demonstrating in Kampala is when you can collapse the system. No, you don't need to demonstrate in Kampala to collapse the system. You can only use the brain to collapse the system.
So who will hear that case? Because
some other judges.
Not this.
Those mentioned will not. Okay. That is constitutional review. That's what I made the ICC to drop Ruto's case. Because I went for a constitutional review on a professor called Professor Harvey Maupin, who was going to be the key witness in Ruto's case for network. This is a professor from France who claims that he knew more about networking, that Ruto had a network. Because he came here for 6 months and learned Kalenjin and Kikuyu. I went to South Africa using my money to go and get a ruling in South African intelligence men gave me. I have friends in this Africa. Let people not look at me and belittle me. I have friends that some people don't have. They got me a ruling which I filed confidential because the court said no, say confidential. To appeal chamber 5, I am asking, why are you bringing this case number 1 of Kenya? There is a witness whom you did not. Did you do a due diligence on the witness? I asked. The application is there on ICC. You can read it. They said, oh, Fatou Bensouda never came with that witness at all again. And she went to ask the court to take me out as a vexatious litigant. I should be thrown out, never to be seen near that court. The court ruled that Dr. Matsanga's application has some merit, but his language must tone down, because I used the English that the judges had to look for dictionary. I'm telling you, I'm not, I have suffered for this Ruto you see here.
God will reward you.
No, honestly.
But on yes.
And now after that, after seeing that is collapsing, they ran to rule number 68. I finished it. There was a man, now I don't know where he is, a boy in the embassy under that high commission, that ambassador of Kenya. They also now they relied on my information. They couldn't know what they were supposed to be done. They should not tell anybody that they were doing any work in the ICC. What? What work? What work? I filed that application. This is all a social, what Mabilis is doing in Uganda.
Yes.
That younger man, Mabilis, a lawyer, is filing a case against 4 judges
that had interest.
Who have interest with President Museveni.
And
they were either in school with him, they are related, or they are married, or they are this. Yes, he's gonna get it.
They were supposed to reaccuse themselves.
Yes,
and they failed to do that.
That is.
And you mentioned
the same Supreme Court. The Chief Justice has to now select another panel.
Another panel
to sit on to hear the case.
Yes.
It is not yet over until it's over.
And I think you mentioned the constitutional review, and I think that is something that is under contention right now in Uganda.
Yes, constitutional review.
Yes.
So the guy is correct.
Have been delaying tactics even.
And I saw him, you know, smiling with his document. I read his English. This is the type of life in Africa we want. We don't need to have fights with the police. You don't need. You put it legally as an intellectual and tell them that's it. That you not see here, Miriam, why I've excelled in this world. I went to when we had the sanctions against Zimbabwe. What did I do? I used a tactic that you will never see. Some people blamed me. They said, oh, where did you file? How could you tell me? When the registrar of the court showed the European Council of Ministers this filing, and this is 42 pages, this Ugandan man, a citizen of Europe, has filed this. The ministers started saying, let's finish this thing politically. Let's not go to the court. That's how the sanctions were finished. Baroness, who was the foreign affairs minister, said let's have talks out of court. Because I filed a motion in the European General Court saying that, look, there you are. There you are. You say the sanctions will remove Mugabe. But 12 years passed, Mugabe is not removed. Can you explain to me why you still have sanctions on Zimbabwe?
Yes.
I think Stephen can bring that application. It's very clear, Stephen. Look for it. My application in the ICC. No, not ICC, in the General Court of Europe. When they saw that, they said, this guy is going to fix us. Because I only asked one question and explained the background. How European Union came to give sanctions. They had to say, let's negotiate with this man out of court. Please, out of court. Don't bring this guy closer to us.
Yes.
The same to Basuda. Basuda said, judges, stop me. Stop this man from me. He's about to take my skirt down. Throw it out, that Kitenge from Gambia. Because I asked the ICC one good thing, Miriam, before we finish. I asked the ICC, did the office of the chief prosecutor do a due diligence on background checks on witness OTP, the professor Harvey Maupin? Did they know that Professor Harvey Maupin was detained, was sentenced to 7 years for arms, for cash with Zuma's PA? And the French, because he works for French intelligence, the French called South Africa, and Zuma was in power. They said, leave the case. I put it before the judges. Wallahi among God is watching. It is there. They said, don't ever talk about it. The judges now gave me an order. When the Suda read this, he knocked out that French professor. He never came to testify. Because that was a very bad. All what I did, I used a social contract, a social network. There were people inside who saw a man, a volunteer, and they also helped me. They said, this guy comes all the way. This one you have not written well. Go on the right. That guy Mabilizi in Uganda will make history. You know, people have written him off. What President Museveni doesn't know, that when it comes to East African Confederation presidency, the ruling that has just been done in Kampala could stop him being the president of East African Confederation. I swear, I will be here, you will see. So people should know and understand that fighting every day on the streets does not help.
It's not a solution.
You see? The other one, musician, is crying with a baby voice. Oh, don't break my hand. No. Just go away and go away. Yes. Go away and file. That Mabilizi is going to be the hero. Mr. Mabilizi is the hero. He's filing an application to ask why Katurebe was a close and all be in the same school with the president. Why he didn't see that the certificate was faulty.
Conflict of interest.
Yes. You can't tell me the certificate. The major thing in parliamentary democracy, in every speaker, the certificate from parliament for you to sign a bill into law, the certificate must be correct. You don't tell me the certificate must be having half. No. Hakuna. And the Mabilis has gone back.
To challenge that.
Yes.
So we'll keep watching and we'll keep updating our viewers. Very interesting developments from Uganda.
Social contract.
Yes.
And a social contract. Mabilis is doing what we call a social contract.
Yes.
He's using the social structures that are available in the Supreme Court. The windows that are available. Like the windows are used on ICC. There were so many things missing which you could enter. Ventilator, choop, you are inside. They close this, you enter here. I filed 22 applications on both cases of Uhuru Kenyatta and Ruto. I filed 22 applications. The last one is the fight between me and Gladys Otieno when I tore her t-shirt in front of 10,000 delegates. Until the chairman said, you are in order. Yes, sir. I want all the t-shirts, all people wearing those t-shirts, to remove them. I won. No Kenyan was doing it. And yet I went, the only Ugandan who went in a Kenyan delegation. I had to do it. All Kenyans were watching Otieno wearing a t-shirt saying Uhuru is a murderer, Ruto is a murderer, they have killed witnesses. I said no. These t-shirts cannot be here. If they are here, we can't have a meeting. And I thought it was a joke. This voice here saved Rule 68. And I did all this for my brothers. I did not ask for money. I've never asked for money. That's patriotism. So instead of us blaming Chinese, let's start also learning from Chinese what exactly makes them so hardworking than the rest of the people in the world. 30 years ago they were poor. Now why are they very rich? We should ask those questions.
There's something they must be doing that is right. So yes. All right.
You see? We are blaming each other for nothing. We are all this horrible around elections. We are just saying, can you give us election in 2022, then we kill each other. Can you give us election in 2021, then the city mortuary becomes more populated. Can you give us elections in Sudan? Those people in Khartoum asking for elections and the civilian government, they want to kill each other. And I urge the military in Khartoum not to give them. Don't give them now. Because they are going to go the Libyan way, I'm telling you. They are going, that country has so many problems. Sudan alone has so many problems. If you give it to civilians, these so-called doctors from where it's London, where professionals, they are going to kill that Sudan. There will be intertribal fighting. Each country will get guns like the Riyak. Like a Riyak now. Have you seen Riyak and Salva Kiir? Each tribe in South Sudan has AK-47.
They have their own military unit.
So giving them
the tribe, yes.
that liberty that civilians first get the new constitution, get people working out, put the rules, then you say, okay, we have left and gone to our barracks. And the African Union should amend that charter.
They've allowed them more time, yes.
Yes. They must allow the authorities in Khartoum more time. unless you want to cause another Libya on the continent. I speak with authority on some of these things.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Miriam.
Yes.
If you have any more questions, let's meet again tomorrow.
I think we've had a very wonderful show today, very informative. And yes, you can meet us here tomorrow for another edition of Good Morning Africa, and also join us later on for our next broadcast. But for now, I think we say our byes. And thank you so much for engaging with us.
And before you say bye,
yes,
Chinese at home, they eat dogs. We in Africa want to join them in their restaurant. In SGR, they tell you, my friend, at times this meat is dog.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Haven't you gone to Ikempiski? The dog week. The dog week. Even a signpost is there. Chinese 888. Restaurant 88. Last year there was a big signpost. The dog meat.
Okay.
So it is up to you and your saliva. Either you have, you know, when you hear it is dog, my God, you want to vomit. But it is a delicacy to Chinese.
Yes, it is. And snails and all that. I eat Chinese restaurants. I love their food, but I'm very...
You have to be specific which type of meat.
I'm very specific when I'm ordering for any meat
yes.
I'm ordering for, yes.
If you are looking for crispy duck, go for crispy duck.
Oh my goodness. All right. A dog week.
Yes, there was a dog week in Kempiski.
Okay.
That week I did not even go there to eat anything until the week was over. Because it is there as you enter the main entrance. It is the signpost is here, dog week.
So
in the Chinese restaurant, and there was a Chinese chef inviting you for the meat.
Thank you very much.
And the people were there. Wazungu were there.
And they were eating?
Yes.
Okay.
Whether it was dog meat or what, but they was eating a dog week.
Wow.
So, look at the things. Can we tomorrow, when these people come to ask for the money, shall we tell them that we give you more dogs? We can rear more dogs, for example, and export them. I'm suggesting. For many African people.
The animal rights group, I don't think they would agree to that, but...
No, there are no animal rights in China. On dogs are a delicacy.
I'm saying across the world.
Go across to Kinshasa. Monkeys are eaten. People slaughter monkeys.
The way we slaughter goats.
Yes. So what human rights?
Okay, cultural preferences, I think. To each their own. Okay. So please let me know about the dog week so that I stay away from that road. Forget the hotel, the road. I will not even pass by. I don't know. Yeah. So we thank you so much for keeping us company today and for engaging with us and for your contribution and for making this show very meaningful. I will see you at our next broadcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Miriam.
Thank you too.
I hope I've talked some sense.
A lot of it.
Thank you very much, viewers. Let's get our social contract together. Before we go out, let's have social structures that when this money is borrowed, is not misused. When equipment is brought, is not stolen. To the extent that the president ordered that anyone found destroying this railway must be shot on sight. For the first time, President Kenyatta was annoyed. You see? So there you are. I'm not very wrong from what I've talked.
You said the truth.
Yeah.
And the truth will set us free. All right. Bye.
Thank you.